Good morning, everyone. Those here and our colleagues watching online. My name is Archie Rastogi. I'm with the GCF Independent Evaluation Unit, serving there as the Chief Evaluation Advisor. It's my immense pleasure to introduce to you this evaluation of GCF investments in Latin America and the Caribbean. No prizes for guessing why Latin America is important in this particular region at this COP, and it was no accident that we're presenting this evaluation here. Uh, in the GCF itself, Latin America and the Caribbean is not just a geographic region, but it's also one of the constituencies with which negotiations in the COP happen. And GCF, therefore, is required to pay specific attention to the needs of vulnerable countries and for geographic parity. What that parity means is that GCF looks at different parts of the world differently as units. So Latin America and the Caribbean being one unit of the GCF's portfolio. And this is why this evaluation is quite important to us. It was also a part of a concerted effort by the GCF evaluation unit to look at the portfolio of the GCF in different groups of countries. So this is a culmination of an effort, multi-year effort, where we first looked at the GCF GCF portfolio in the small island developing states, the least developed countries, Africa, and then ultimately Latin America and the Caribbean. The speaker for today is Ms. Ji-Yoon Yoon. She's an evaluation specialist, evaluation specialist at the Independent Evaluation Unit. She has, I think, 20 years of experience in development, working previously in a bilateral agency in different parts of the world, also including many countries in Latin America itself. And she's looked at the evaluation unit. She looks after evaluations, but also policy and legal matters. So she's an expert in many things, including this particular one. And I'm going to hand over to Ji-Yoon right away. Ji-Yoon, take us away and tell us about this evaluation.
Thank you very much, Arch. Can you hear me very well? Is it okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Everyone, thank you for joining us at this session. I'm pleased to share what we learned from this evaluation for LAC. Excellent introduction. Thanks very much for that, Arch. So actually, I prepared some background for this evaluation, but actually Arch presented very well. So after this 13 group of countries evaluation, CIS, LAC, African evaluation. So LAC is technically saying first regional evaluation that the GCF-IEU undertook. So that is important significance of this evaluation. And a side note, this evaluation also has special feature for REDD+ RBP pilot projects in LAC. So it produced a special study report for it because the REDD+ RBP pilot of the GCF was concentrated in the LAC region. 7 out of 8 countries was in the LAC region. So if you are interested, please go to the IEU website and find the report. So I will briefly walk through the findings of the evaluation and the recommendation as well. So first findings, we wanted to know what is the value proposition, what GCF can offer to the region. Actually, GCF value proposition is very clear. We can provide direct access, a wide range of financial instruments anchoring to climate needs rather than the income groups of the countries, and also strong support for the capacity building through its readiness program. So that is clear. And we through the evaluation, the country in the LAC region recognize and ready to utilize this GCF's value proposition. On the right side of the table shows that LAC has the biggest share in terms of support for direct access entity through its GCF readiness program among the all regions. So one of the GCF value proposition direct access, and the Latin America countries are trying to utilize that value proposition. But unfortunately, the fund has yet to recognize or leverage its value proposition in that region. But fairly speaking, this is not only for the LAC, but all for the whole region. In 2024 September, just one month before this evaluation was concluded, GCF established its regional departments, including the Department of the LAC. But after that, so it's not so long. But after that, there is no strategy or specific approach to the region for specific region is not yet developed. So that was the first finding of this evaluation, and the second was about access. LAC has 25% of share among GCF portfolio at the time of the evaluation. But still, there was issues about access. One is quality of access, which means direct access, and the other was predictability. So LAC has 25 DAEs, direct access entities, among 87 globally accredited DAEs. But only 7 DAEs out of 25 has enlisted just one GCF-funded project. And these 7 DAE have 17 projects. And this is composed with the 12 by regional DAEs, like CABE, CAF, CCCCC, etc. And only 5 projects are run by national DAEs. So why this gap happens? So evaluation found that LAC region has decades of experience in programming and implementing environment-related projects. As you might remember, REDD+ LBP pilot was concentrated in the LAC region thanks to its experience on forestry and environment projects. But the capacity that GCF understand and require is based on the due diligence exercise across organizational aspects. So this can lead to the gap of understanding capacity and lower level of direct access. And the other aspect is the predictability, especially for multi-country projects. Multi-country projects is driven by AEs, mainly due to or thanks to cultural and contextual similarity of the region and the high cost of programming with the GCF, and to reduce the risk by engaging multiple countries in one project. But it does have its virtues, but also has a diverse implication, notably, say, timeliness, lower predictability, and lower relevance to the country context. So these are 2 access-related findings. And the next is about the country ownership and the others. LAC has strong country ownership. The countries in LAC desire to originate its own project, especially with the single country projects and through direct access. But as you can see in the previous slide, it is not realized yet. In terms of coherence and complementarity, regional platforms exist, such as regional dialogue, but the country platforms where most coordination actually happens is not supported systemically. But we had good news in this COP that the GCF will support 14 countries platforms through its readiness support. So something is progressing. In terms of capacity building investment, the issue, I mean, as you see, there are a lot of investment through readiness, but the issue is each country have different capacity gaps. For example, Caribbean countries often suffer from the number of people, not from the capacity itself. This means support need to be more tailored and more country specific. And the last slide for findings before moving to the recommendation is implementation and the others. So most project in LOG is in the early stage of implementation, but there are some emerging results. And also we found interesting examples of a public-private collaboration in the region. One example here is Chile project, Atacama Solar project, where long-term financing from GCF and GAF signaled to the market that solar lending was visible. And the commercial bank quickly followed, offering similar terms. This single 143 megawatt project helped unlock over 3,000 megawatt of installed solar capacity nationwide. So I can say this is a clear example of market transformation driven by the CCF. So there was some success stories. But also there are challenges as well. Projects in the region have experienced typical implementation challenges, which can be enhanced if needs-based, timely, and focused implementation support would be provided. Also, engagement with MSMEs was also limited, even though MSMEs are central to the economic resilience in the region. And the LOG region is comparatively good capacity or foundation for the private sector engagement. Lastly, for the indigenous people, implementation of the GCF policy and standard is being mainstreamed and operationalized in the portfolio, but level of engagement in programming beyond just informing the project is often limited. So now I will move to the recommendations. Please note that this recommendation was made 1 year ago, so there was some progress made, but I will go through each of them briefly. So firstly, as we saw in the first finding, GCF should clarify its own approach to the region. It can be a strategy or other format, but GCF anyway need to develop its approach clearly to the region. Secondly, GCF need to leverage existing capacity in the region. This include differentiated indicator of capacity, direct access options beyond institutional accreditation. For single country projects, GCF could play a more proactive role in project design while leveraging national systems and capacities, which is important asset in the region. And for the multi-country projects, GCF could play as a channel of communication during design and implementation of projects, which can improve coordination and the predictability of the countries. Third recommendation is about country-focused support. GCF should provide more country-focused support. A country-specific view is important to understand where the needs and gaps are. So support for the national and regional platforms is also important to support the countries to mobilize and coordinate climate finance. Fourth, GCF should actively partner with the national and the regional institution for private sector programming. Because there are a long way to go from GCF through AEEs to the beneficiaries and MSMEs. National financial intermediaries are especially important for private sector programming. This partnership can expand impact of GCF investment on the ground. Lastly, it's about the regional presence and regional departments. GCF regional LOG department and any future regional presence should be aligned with country needs. This includes originating projects with countries, working in lingua franca, and supporting adaptive management during the implementation. I will stop here and look forward to listening to your feedback and questions. Thank you very much for your attention and interest. Over to you, Art.
Thank you so much, Jayan. This was one of the later evaluations of the GCF as a portfolio in a region. And since then, so while the audience is warming up for the questions, those online and those in the room, since then the GCF board has approved its regional presence in the sense that GCF has officially launched regional presence. The board has started to look for regional offices. What has happened this year is that the board invited a call for proposals where cities were able to make their offer to host the GCF offices in the future. About 43 cities applied, countries or cities applied, and that effort has been on. And we're expecting a shortlist next year and potentially GCF regional offices in 2027. Jay, what can you speak a little bit about regional presence? And there have been other evaluations in the IU, in the independent evaluation unit, which speak of regional presence, not in a summative fashion, but there are some findings. Can you speak a little bit about regional presence itself and the extent to which it'll resolve issues of access and difficulty accessing the GCF?
Thanks, Arch. Yeah, it's a very good question, and we talk about the regional presence, and but we also know that regional presence cannot solve everything. It's one of the prerequisite for to be closer to the country. But as you can see in the findings of the evaluation, there is GCF value proposition itself is not realized. What it is, direct access, more comprehensive and long-term stable capacity building support through readiness, how to take risk more and to attract the private financing. These are all the different and the more wide the questions to the GCF business model. So I can say regional presence itself, of course, I hope and I think it will help the countries to be closer to the GCF, to understand better and to communicate easier with the lingua franca, with the capacity building or information sharing in a closer stance, but it cannot solve all the problem. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. There are a lot of questions in the chat box. I'm going to read them in the reverse order for a specific reason, because I want to come to Eric in case he might want to take the floor as well to address some of the questions that are in the chat box. Eric was also co-author of this report and was one of the contributors, in fact, the lead from the consulting side. But let me start with the questions from Bill and from Arunjana. So Arunjana asks, can you elaborate on the differences in how GCF understands institutional capacity and how the stakeholders understand it? So how does GCF take these differences into account and its theory of change for multi-country projects that contain capacity building components? So Arunjana is asking really about institutional capacity and the understanding of it from the headquarters and from the countries, and how that's taken into account in multi-country projects. And there's a question from Bill on the tension between single country and multi-country projects and how the GCF navigates the tension of addressing transboundary challenges associated with climate while ensuring country-specific relevance. Jian, first I'm going to turn to you, and then I'm going to ask Eric if he wants to come in as well. Over to you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much for excellent questions. For the capacity, GCF has a strong business model built on the due diligence modality of GCF and AEs and countries. But the GCF accreditation system itself is very rigid, and it is focused on the due diligence exercise if this AE has this requirement, this policy, etc. So, but on the ground, the stakeholders has capacity to program, to identify project, and to implement the project, to manage the results. The many countries and the many institutions in the region has that capacity through experience, through decades of experience, environmental project management. So the GCF should take this capacity into account when the accreditation reviews and the funding proposal reviews happen. That is differences between those two understanding. The other question about capacity building component of the multi-country projects in the theory of change. If I understand correctly, this question, certain the multi-country project does include the capacity building component as a lead up to the project identification by private sector. There is capacity building session for national partners or private sector how to understand the climate change projects different from the development project, etc. So I think indeed the capacity building component is embedded in certain projects in terms of theory of change and components, but if not, or if it is too high level apart from the country perspective, then this capacity building component is detached from what it intended. And the other question about MPC and the SPS, the multi-country and the single country project, the tension about the countries really sees the benefit of the multi-country project, but at the same time, very concerned about the predictability and the less relevancy with the country context. So if the multi-country project is well concerted in the initial part of the project design, then it can serve both purpose to address transboundary challenges and meeting the country-specific relevance. For example, the multi-country project does have different types, like GABE or some IDB type of the multi-country project. Really has in-country connections, in-country histories of cooperation, and sometimes it does have allocation for each countries. So in that case, more closer coordination with the national partners happen when the multi-country project is identified. But when the very really global and transboundary private sector project identified, and it is, I mean, by nature a little detached from the country specific relevance. But in that case, it should be the later stage that country need to be logged in and identify if it is really relevant to the country. I hope this answer to your questions. And I think Eric has something to add. Please, Eric. Arch,
Did you want to come in, Eric?
Yeah, if he wants.
All right, we're not hearing from him, so it might be technical challenges or inability to come online. But yeah, so as Jayad was saying also, so we're finding that the welcoming of the country's preference for multi-country or single country project depends on the AE and the type of project, as opposed to just a binary between multi-country and single country in many regions. And for example, if we look at the portfolio in other parts of the GC of the world, in the Pacifics, there can be a preference for multi-country projects with entities that have been based in the region. In the Caribbean as well, there's been a preference for regional entities with which there's a history of working, But there can be a sort of suspicion of working in multi-country projects, especially multi-region projects, where countries don't have predictability about how much finance they're getting from the GCF. So it's ultimately predicated on the model of the project, as opposed to just that binary of multi-country and single country projects, which is sometimes not fair, and which is what this evaluation found. G, another question from Eric is about a regional strategy. He asks, is the GCF considering designing a specific strategy for LAC region based on this information? Speak to us a little bit about the board's uptake of this, and what that means for regional presence, for example.
I think it's a very difficult question for me to answer. As you know, IAU made a recommendation, and it's a board to take that recommendation into account. And of course, Secretariat also produced its management response and the actions. In my understanding, and our recommendation as well, it can be a specific strategy for the region, or it can be articulated approach to the region, or it can be articulated process, ongoing and repeated process for the region and for the country. So I can see some signals from the Secretariat to actively host regional dialogues and support the country platforms through its readiness program. So it is the steps forward, but yeah, I'm not sure if it will be a specific strategy for certain region.
Thanks, G. In the GCF, we also noticed that there's not to develop specific strategies for specific portfolios or for specific approaches can also be challenging because of the governing model of the GCF, which is very much like the UNFCCC, so decision making can be a bit slow. That said, looks like, as G was saying, Secretariat has organized itself since the evaluation into regional desks. So previously, the programming, the implementation, and the monitoring divisions were separate, but now they're approaching, they've got a regional approach, which means there's a specific person for every country. That's been a different approach since the conclusion of this evaluation. And also, we've seen the launch of regional presence, which may not be a fully well articulated and expressed strategy by the GCF, but will amount to a specific approach towards the Latin America and the Caribbean through its staff and the way that they operate, which will be more, hopefully, culturally attuned with the culture of Latin America. If there are no additional questions, and we're inching towards the end of the time allocated to us, G, if you might have any concluding remarks, and then we'll wrap up within another minute or so.
Yeah, just I would like to thank you very much, and yeah, it was a pleasure to share this evaluation, and yeah, I hope regional presence and all the reforms of the GCF can contribute to support the countries more in climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, G, and thank you, colleagues, for participation. And this is the Latin America evaluation in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is the Latin America and the Caribbean evaluation in Latin America. So we hope it can inform some of the discussions here. And tomorrow, just a quick plug-in. So tomorrow we have a panel with other funds as well, looking at the performance of the operating entities of the financial mechanism. And that's at 4 o'clock, which we're organizing with the GEF, the GCF, and the Adaptation Fund, including participation from the UNFCCC Secretariat. So hopefully, evaluations like this can inform the review of the financial mechanism and the negotiations in the negotiation rooms. And we also have from the GCF evaluation unit, a presentation on the country ownership approach of the GCF, which we are doing at 11 o'clock on Thursday. With that plug-in, let me close this session. Thank you so much for your participation and your attendance. And thank you, G, for dialing in at midnight, close to midnight in Korea time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
It's my
everyone.
pleasure.